Hi, folks. Ryan Honeyman here from Lift Economy. Many folks have come to us over the last 10 years and asked, how do I get more involved in creating an economy that works for the benefit of all life? They also ask, what skills and experiences do I need to help make this transition? So 3 years ago, we created something called the Next Economy MBA to help address this and similar questions. Lift Economy's Next Economy MBA is an online course that's designed for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, students, recent graduates, employees, and folks who want to learn more about transformational next economy strategies and businesses. Join the growing alumni network of nearly 250 alumni who've gone through this program and learned essential skills and hopefully built lifelong relationships for catalyzing businesses in the emergent and regenerative economy. So we encourage you to check out our course. You can go to lifteconomy.com/MBA. The next course, Cohort 7, starts on September 21st, 2021. So once again, go to www.lifteconomy.com/MBA. And now, on with the show. Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy. So welcome, Ari.
Nice to be on.
Cool. And so, Ari, Zingerman's has changed over the years. Why don't what's the latest description of what Zingerman's is?
You've changed over the years too, probably. But what are we today? We are a community of businesses, all located here in the Ann Arbor area. I think we have 9 or 10 of them now, and each business is unique. Within the organization, we only do each business once. That's part of our vision, and I know you want to talk about visioning. They're all within about 15 minutes of each other, and we operate as one organization with these semi-autonomous pieces. We have the deli, which is the original business. We have a mail-order business, a bakery, a creamery, a coffee roasting, a little candy manufacturing. Zingerman's Roadhouse is a sit-down restaurant that does all regional American food. We have 11 or 12 acres of organic or sustainable agriculture. That's a piece of that. And then attached to that, we have a 1834 farmhouse and 1837 barn that we totally renovated, and we do events there. And I'm probably forgetting something, but that's what we got going on, and we have about 700 employees, and we will do about $60 million in sales this year, and this year for us means ending July 31, 2016.
Awesome. And what's if you know, what's the next business? Is it going to be Zingerman's Tofu?
The next business will be a Korean restaurant.
Nice. All right.
And hopefully by next fall.
And so, you mentioned that you only do each business once, and just for folks who don't know, I met Ari at a visioning session at Heath Ceramics.
Oh, that's what I forgot. Zing Train.
Yeah, Zing
Our
Train.
training business. Thank you, Ryan.
Sure. And so, what's the Zingerman's has been highlighted in the book Small Giants, and along the way, and so you have a unique business proposition of one business and only in Ann Arbor. So maybe you could just tell folks why. What's the reasoning?
Well, I mean, I think as I'm sure we'll go over more than once, but I don't think there's any right or wrong future. It's just the key is to have a future you're going after that is aligned with who you are individually or as an organization. And for me, it's not really about what you could do. It's about what you want to do. And, there's all the normal growth paths that we could have or still go down, but it's not how I want to live, right? So, I like to have a chance to know the people who work in our businesses, and I like to taste the food and meet the customers. And it's not like I, can tell you every one of the 700 people's names, but I know most of them. And it's not like I know every customer or I taste every single product every single day. But, we're here and we're present, and the organization, people know each other within it. And, we're in a nice town where it's only 15 minutes from one end to the other at the most. And we like that.
Yeah, and you have one of the best football teams, and you stole our football coach here from San Francisco.
Well, I wouldn't say we stole him. He chose to come here.
Maybe the 49ers let him go. So,
well, he went there from Stanford, so
Fair enough. So, one interesting thing on your business card, I noticed John Abrams, mutual contact friend. Also happens to be the highest scoring B Corp in the world, has a quote on your business card that says, Ari is, I don't know if it's Ari or if it's Zingerman's, but they're leaders of the next economy. And what does that mean to you? Like, what do you think he's saying when he says that?
Well, I think I always put it on the group because it's not about me, it's about the organization. I don't know. It's a good quote. I think that, I guess for me, all of the different economies coexist, right? So, as a history major, it's not like one day the clock stops and then the next day it's a new economy. I think that the reality is that there's many people and many organizations doing many different things all at the same time. And, the focus, for me, for us, I guess, is to just do good work within our own ecosystem and, try to help other people in their ecosystems to do good work too. And, I think you and I agree. It would probably be a lot better for the world if there were a lot more people trying to do good work. So if that's the next economy, I'm on board.
Great. Yeah, I think your insight is within their ecosystems, which I think isn't necessarily like a standard business insight, that there are, it's more of a multinational, make everything the same, which I think perhaps is that insight.
All of that model comes out of the Industrial Revolution and the idea that standardization and, in theory, simplification is somehow better, but I would suggest it's counter to nature, and it's counter to human nature, and it doesn't work very effectively. And that's where we are, where people are running into trouble.
Right. So, Ari, when I first met you, you did an interesting exercise that I think I put in my notes, a challenge for next economy companies, but I think it's a challenge for any company, which is just simply to sit down and think a little more long-term about what you're actually trying to do and why you want to do it. And so for your visioning exercise, it was transformative for me, and it was 15 minutes. And so I'm wondering if you could just explain to folks, like, maybe how you came to that visioning exercise and then what it entails, just so people have an idea of what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So the visioning work is really integral to our whole approach, and it's a process that we've adapted. The original work was done by a guy named Ron Lippitt at the University of Michigan Institute of Social Research in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we learned it through a guy named Stash Kazmierski, who learned it from him. It's basically focusing on what you want your future to be like. It's not a prediction. It's not a strategic analysis. It's how you want to live, whether that's personally because we do them for our own lives as individuals, or whether it's as an organization. And it's just getting clear on where you're going, because there's no right answer. And a lot of us get pressured into basically choosing from a multiple choice menu that somebody else created. But the reality is we don't have to paint by numbers. We can make up our own future. And if you like the multiple choice, run with it. That's not for me to judge. But, to have a really clear sense of how you want to feel in whatever time frame you pick, 5 years, 10 years, 7 years, whatever. How do you want to feel? How do you want the community to feel about you? what impact do you want to have on the people who are part of your organization, on your town or your community, on the environment, on the world, whatever it might be. And the things that don't really matter don't need to go in there, but a lot of things do matter, and a lot of times there's things that are not stuff that a typical business plan would address. So if you love drinking great coffee, I would suggest that in your vision it says that your office serves really great coffee, although the bank could care less. For quality of life, if you're going to be in there 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week, it kind of makes a really big difference. So I mean, the music, the nuance, the garden, whatever it might be that matters to you, because those are the things, that are going to make the life that you want to lead. And some of those may be financial, but they could also be about the quality of your product, or how people feel about it, or the impact you've had in producing, agricultural producing countries around the world, or really on anything, and so the visioning process is actually what you did when I was out there, is a very quick version of it, but it's built around the idea of what we call hot pen, which is essentially, for people who do writing regularly, it's often called free writing. So it's basically you're going to sit down and write without thinking about your future in advance. You're going to just sit down and write in the belief that most of us know in our hearts really what we want, but we get trained by society and our families and whatever to overthink it and worry about it to the point where we block out what our real dreams are. And so basically it's just a return to natural, what I would suggest is a natural process that every 5-year-old can do, which is make up stories about where they want to go. In this case, it's your story.
Right. And I think the sort of insight for me was you do something which I don't think many people think about when visioning. It's like you actually say, imagine it's a day, like you wake up and like,
Yep.
What do you smell
Yep.
and what do you see? And that was so
Yep.
different than the visioning of like corporations, I feel like.
Yeah, well, Einstein, I'm paraphrasing, but Einstein said we've created a society that honors the intellect but has, disowned the heart. And I have come to believe, having undone my own overemphasis in my upbringing on the intellect, it's not like intellect is bad, but it's just in our hearts. I mean, we know a lot about how we want to live, but we get trained to think about it and think about it and think about it. So the whole thing of this process is to stop thinking about it and just say what's in your heart. You're not obligated to do what comes out, but at least you're clear that that's, where you're at, and then you can work on it from there. But we tend to get, understandably anxious about how we're going to make it happen, and this is all about forgetting the how and focusing first on the what we want the future to be like, and then later you back up and start working on the how. And again, it's not about what you could do, it's about what you want to do. So, could we franchise? I don't know, probably. Could we go public? I don't know, probably. I don't have any interest in it, and if you're going to work at something really hard, it's a lot more fun if you're working at what you believe in than it is at what somebody else told you could have or should have done.
Yeah. Some of the stuff I noticed from that free writing exercise is scary because it's like stuff you don't admit to yourself usually.
Yep.
And I've heard, I always hear the phrase like, what would you do if you weren't scared? But sometimes you don't really know what that thing is. So it's like if you combine your exercise to like that question, what would you do if you weren't scared? It's actually very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that, if you're like super buttoned down, linear thinking, high anxiety, I've seen a few people struggle, like they just won't move their hand. But other than that, I've never seen anybody come out of it with something that wasn't inspiring.
Right.
And some of them, it doesn't mean it's done the minute that you finish it, because you're going to craft it, and if you're in an organization, you need to engage other people's perspectives and all that kind of stuff. But, we have it in us. It's just that we've hot-wired sort of this, well, I want this, but that'll never work. I really want to be a poet, but how am I going to make a living? So that the voices come in so fast that we can't even hear our own anymore.
Yeah. And so I know at least at Heath Ceramics, you had advocated for a 15-year vision. Is that the frequency that you recommend people?
No, I mean, it could be 5. It could be. I mean, the point is really we use it for everything. So every project you're learning, it's really a different way of thinking. So it's helpful to have one at least for the organization. But the truth is, the maximal benefit will be when you get everybody in the organization thinking about positive futures and not about problems. So it's sort of the antithesis of short-term problem solving, which is very helpful in a typhoon, but not really that helpful when you're dreaming up how you want to live your life. And when we're focused on the future, it's just scientifically shown. I mean, we're, much more, our creativity comes out more, and the possibility is very high. Instead of when we're fixing problems, we tend to devolve back into arguing and getting bogged down in tactics and tools that we need to get there instead of really dreaming big.
Right. It's more like abundance mindset.
It's all about abundance mindset. If you do the visioning well, you can create almost anything with enough good people and enough time.
Yeah. So, one of the other things that I'd love to talk to you about is this, here in the Bay Area, we have Buy Right Market, one of your good friends, Sam from Buy Right, who's kind of taken a similar path and is also taking your Zing Train classes. And like one of the sort of theories we have at Lyft about local, bioregional, self-reliant areas is vertical integration. And so maybe could you talk a little bit about how you came to realize and like what were the decision points to say like we actually need to do this? And if people listening to this are thinking about how do I think about vertical integration and is it worth it and what are some of the mistakes or best practices?
Well, yeah, I mean, we didn't really say like we want to have vertical integration.
Actually, maybe you should define what it is for people.
I don't like copy. So I think I'm not saying it's bad for other people. It just doesn't feel good to me because when you go into the 4th or 5th unit, it just never feels like the original, and I never liked that, And so, but then at the same time, Paul, in a good way, was very focused. We need to grow and provide opportunity for people, and there was a lot of merit to that. So it was sort of like, okay, well, how do you combine not having multiple units and focusing on, enhancing the original, but still provide growth when we had physically taken up, at least we thought, this, the available space. So, out of that creative tension came this idea of, well, let's open other businesses, and do them all here in the area, right? And so, and then we wanted a managing partner or partners in them, so there was an owner that would, have a passion for what that business did, and be in there, in quotes every day, driving it for greatness, and who's, signing on the loans the same as we were. So, in hindsight, I think there's a lot of upside to that, but there's also a lot of challenges to it, So everything has its challenges. It's just picking the challenges that you want. Like we have to learn a new industry every time we open a new business, which is not easy.
Korean food.
Well, whatever it is. I mean, the event space at the farm, we've done catering for years, but that really doesn't have anything to do with, physical maintenance of an event space and going out and, we're used to being that when they pick their event space, then they call it for caterers, but we're not used to being the event space. So, it has a whole new set of challenges and issues, so each thing that we do has those, which we like, but, you have to want to do that work. I guess in many ways the key of the vision for me is more that it came from us and that it was from our heart and something we believed in and not something that we were shopping, for made to order clothes and picked what seemed the best option. We made up our own.
Right. And sort of belatedly.
And I think that's what gets, when you're going to work that hard, it doesn't work when you don't really believe in it.
Right. I was just going to say, belatedly just defining vertical integration. I just kind of went with it. So for those of you who don't know, it's actually owning your own supplier. So, Zingerman's Coffee would then supply Zingerman's Deli with coffee. But
we also wholesale to the outside. So, the depending on which one of them it is, like our producing businesses wholesale probably 60, 70%, 80% is to outside customers.
Right.
So the idea, in hindsight, it's basically creating a diverse ecosystem. And so, when one business is doing really well, probably another one's not doing so well, which precludes the sort of, really high growth that a lot of people want. But we like it. And for me, it creates a much more holistically sound ecosystem again, but it doesn't allow you those boom years.
You've mentioned growth, and this is sort of a tension point for me, thinking about Next Economy. And, in many respects, Zingerman's has eschewed growth because you're not, expanding rapidly. And,
well, we're growing. I
just
think
mean
we're
like
growing
into
in
other
a more
areas.
holistic way at like 8 to 10% a year.
Yeah. And maybe that's like a question I have is why do businesses need to grow?
They don't.
Yeah. even 8 to 10%. I was just thinking like, what's wrong with just being like, we're not doing any more growth. We're just going to stay. Do people in the business get less motivated because there's not growth opportunities for your employees?
Well, yeah, there's opportunities out in the world. So if you decide, I think if you have a vision and you're clear that that's your vision, then people are not, there's no bait and switch, right? Like they didn't come in there thinking they were going to get this big growth opportunity. They know where you're headed, which is basically where you are, and then they understand that they're there for a year or two to learn, and then move on to something else, which is nothing wrong with as long as everybody understands that's what you're doing. We chose growth because it provides opportunity to hire more people and, enhance the quality of what we do. And, by helping people to become managing partners, it's helping to help them live their dreams, whereas they might not be able to open a business on their own. They can do it within the organization. And, it's like now we're moving towards employee ownership. And, there's stuff that, would never have happened without it. But I don't think there's any right or wrong. You can get smaller. It's being mindful of the fact that you can choose, and that the less you're choosing based on socially imposed pressure and the more you're choosing based on what you really want to do, the more, I think, powerful and effective it is.
Right. Yeah, one sort of hypothesis we have at Lyft is that if you're going to grow, it should be in a sort of, I guess it's franchising. So you're almost growing by replication rather than scale. So as opposed to like Walmart just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's like the Zingermans of, there's a Buy-Rite in San Francisco and a Zingerman's in Ann Arbor. And then, how do we sort of replicate that model rather than Zingerman's necessarily being in every city, in every state?
Well, we're doing it because we're not going to open in every city. So.
I heard you're opening in Disneyland. Is that true? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's a good joke. I was just in Orlando speaking on Monday, actually, but no, we're not opening there. I guess my experience, and I just don't know how much people respond to getting told what not to do. And so I think the best thing I know how to do is just lead a good life and be kind and, generous and create positive stuff here, and the belief that other people will be drawn to that and, want to create something similar. So I don't know if people really want to open all over the country and franchise. Go for it. I'm not going to tell them not to, but I think I don't know how conducive that is to living a great life for them, but that's their call.
Right. And so this other topic, we kind of touched on it, or you mentioned it briefly at Heath Ceramics, is sort of sharing finances and transparency. And I know that Zingerman's practices open book management.
Yeah.
So was that?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, was that implemented by when you did you read Jack Stack's book, or what was the transition like?
Yep. Well, we have there's a big piece of what I think we do here. So you have the book, but in the part one of the business book, there's an essay called 12 Natural Laws of Business. It's my strong belief that any successful organization, small or large, anywhere, for-profit, not-for-profit, whatever, that's doing well, and I don't just mean making money, but that's a thriving organization, is living in harmony with those natural laws. And I think that part of the deal is that there is no one singular secret to success, and I think I guess I would say that most of us are raised to think hierarchically, and so we're all looking for that. What's that top thing that we need to do? But, and to the credit of the B Corp test, I mean, it has multiple components because there isn't just one thing, it's all of it, right? And so open book is a big piece of what we do. Visioning is a big piece. Servant leadership is a big piece. Customer service is a big piece. The food is a huge piece. There's 15, 20 more, and they all come together. And in the same way that diversity of the businesses, or i.e. vertical integration, creates, I think, a healthier, more resilient, more diverse ecosystem. Also, the more diverse and healthy your management practices are, the better it's going to work too. Because if you rely only on lean, which we do a fair bit with, especially at our mail order, they do it really, really well. But if you only do lean, you don't have a vision. If you only do vision, you know where you're going, but you're not that effective. If you do open book, but you don't have servant leadership, then it's easy to lose track of, the quality of the work experience. So the idea for me is by having, 15, 20 things that we use, each enhances the quality and effectiveness of the others. And open book is a big one. We did learn it. I learned it by reading Great Game of Business, and then, we've since gotten to know the people down there. And, like everything else, we sort of morph it and adapt it to our own ecosystem here. But the basic principles of it came from them, and we've been doing it a good 20 years, 22 years, and I would say we probably did it mediocre for the first 5 or 6 or 7. And now we have a Zing Train seminar, and we teach other people how to do it.
I think that's the point. You touched on a point, I think, you have to be able to be okay with doing it poorly for the first few years. Like, I feel like some people just wouldn't start because they're not okay with doing it poorly, where
right.
It's so valuable to do it, even if you do it poorly.
Right. Well, that's true of everything. And so it's one of the natural laws of businesses. It takes a lot longer to get to greatness than most people think. And that's true of what they already do. It's just that they forgot what it was, so whatever. If they've been playing with computers and software since they were 12 and the business opened when they were 24, they actually have 12 years of hard work, even though people judge it from when the business opened. It's actually, they've been at it for a long time. When you meet musicians, many times they grew up in musical families. They might have started going on tour at 18, but they have been playing in front of the family dinner table and every holiday since they were 2. So the truth is they have hundreds and hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of practice every year. By the time they're 18, they've been basically 15 years of practice. Yeah,
it's the whole Outliers sort of. I don't know if you read
well,
that
book. Came from Anders Ericsson, who's a Swedish social psychologist and working in Florida now. But I think it makes sense. I don't know anybody who's great at anything that didn't work their butt off at it for a really long time.
Right. That's a great segue into what books. Yeah, I know you're an avid reader. One book every week or 2 weeks, I think, was your going rate. So what are a few books that you are? Yeah. What's the book that you give away to people the most besides anything that you've written?
By far I'd give away my own books. Well, I don't know. Brenda Hewlin's book, If You Want to Write, changed my life. I'm high on that. Ignore Everybody by Hugh McLeod. I'm high on that. Lately, The Art Spirit by Robert Henry, which was written in 1924. That's excellent. Emma Goldman's Anarchism and Other Essays is always high on my mind. That was written in 1910, I think.
I remember you. Maybe you could tell folks briefly about your. I always wanted to ask you about your interest in anarchy. So maybe what's the relationship?
So I studied the anarchists when I was in school. I studied Russian history. We have the largest anarchist collection in the country is at U of M. I used to go up there and study, and then I started working in restaurants. And when I started managing kitchens, I sort of tried leaving everyone alone. in the naive belief they would just do the right thing, which completely bombed. And so for years, I would say I was a lapsed anarchist because I still believed in it, but I didn't practice. And about 6-7 years ago, when I was working on part 1 of the business book, I got asked to speak at the Jewish Studies Department, and Deborah Dash-Moore, who runs the department, titled the talk Rye Bread and Anarchism, because I had just written this long essay on the history of Jewish rye bread, and she knew my history background. And, you know, so about 2 months before I was going to speak, I was like, man, I haven't looked at any of those books in forever. I better get myself regrounded so I don't humiliate myself in front of a bunch of history people. And when I started to reread it, I was blown away by how much of what they were writing about, which I had been drawn to, you know, when I was 20, was really woven into the way we run the business now, and was very parallel to what's now called progressive business. So the most overt thing of getting rid of government, I don't really care about one way or the other, but beneath that, there's all this stuff about respecting every individual, about free choice, about free collaboration, and it's not about chaos at all, and it never was. It's about not forcing people to belong to things they don't want to belong to, and it's about getting out of the mindset that hierarchy is a good thing, you know, other than when it's freely chosen, and getting out of the mindset that people in higher levels, in quotes, know more because they don't. And then just honoring every individual as the creative spirit and an intelligent person I believe they are.
Love it, especially that it resonates across 100 years. That's
yeah. Well, David White, among others, David White, the poet and writer, his stuff is really good too. And I'm paraphrasing; I could look it up. But I mean, he said, you know, an artist is often 100 years ahead of their time, and that their work won't be recognized for over a century and understood for over a century. And I read that and I was like, oh yeah, here you go, because they were you know, reacting to the dehumanization that's implicit in the industrial model, and you know, they didn't know there was no creative business really in that era, right? So Bo Burlingham, who you mentioned, Small Giants, who wrote Small Giants, you know, said that, he goes, they had the right yo-yo but the wrong string, and you guys figured out the string.
Nice. So
you know, we, like, all our meetings are open. You know, we're moving towards staff ownership. We're open book management. You know, so there's a lot of things that we do that, you know, flip the traditional model on its head. So, but it's hard to get ourselves out of hierarchical thinking because we're raised to think that way, you know?
Yeah. So who else is inspiring you? Like, who else should we talk to for this interview series? Like business owners kind of living the next economy?
Gary Snyder, the poet, who's up by Sacramento up there, or up by Davis, I mean, is an amazing guy.
Like the Gary Snyder, the beatniks?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to him.
Sam Keene is another amazing writer in his 80s, I think, in Sonoma. They're on my mind. I must be focusing on people in their 80s today. Peter Kestenbaum is an amazing business writer who's in, I think, in Monterey. So they're all, not that it matters, but they're all out by you. You know, Danny Meyer is certainly a creative thinker and a good friend in New York City. Chip Connolly, you probably know already.
I don't know.
Chip Connolly started Joie de Vivre Hotels.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I know of him, but I thought you meant like, oh, he's probably a friend of yours. I don't know him.
Well, I don't know. Okay,
yeah.
Well, he's a good guy.
Cool.
He's doing Airbnb stuff now, I think.
Yeah.
You know, Sam from Buy Rights, as you mentioned, a great guy. I don't know. I'll send you more names.
Cool. Well, really appreciate it, Ari. This is awesome. And you know, looking forward to following Zingerman's. Hopefully Zing Train continues to train more and more businesses, because, you know, the stuff you guys are preaching is amazingly simple, and I think it's one value you provide is just to help people relax and simplify their life, which I think is incredibly valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, and if people want more, they can email me directly, always at ari@zingermans.com, and then the books and the seminars are at zingtrain.com. We try to stay off of Amazon, so the books, I mean, they're on there, but it's actually more expensive on Amazon because it's through other people that are reselling them.
Got it. So zingtrain.com and then ari@zingermans.com.
Yeah, and if they want to buy food, which we like too, zingermans.com is the mail order site.
And I heard you do mail order. Is that right?
That's the mail order site is zingermans.com.
Got it. All right, Ari. Well, enjoy the holiday break. Thank you for everything, and look forward to connecting with you soon.
There's no break here. We're busy.
Are you open on Christmas?
No, but other than that, we're open. So
yeah,
it's okay. I'm not complaining. It doesn't bother me. But when everybody else is on break, that's when we're busiest.
People got to eat.
God bless them. We're glad they got to eat. If they stop eating, we're out of business.
All right, man. Thanks again, Ari, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.